back to my channel. Today we are finally going to jump into my review of the new Gucci foundation. I know that I've been promising this video for a minute, you guys, and this has been a tricky foundation to review, and I just did not feel right about coming on camera and talking to you about it until I figured it out. You guys know I like to be thorough when I review, and because of the price tag of this foundation, I just could not bring myself to come on camera and tell you guys anything until I had figured it out. I have been wearing this for 6 days now. I've played with it with different primers, different powders, no powder. I have a lot to say about this foundation. Let's just put it to you guys that way. Before we jump into the information about the foundation, up here on the screen is an image of my skin type and what I look for, what I like, and what I dislike in foundation. I always feel it's very important for the person who is reviewing the foundation behind the camera to explain to the viewers what they like and what they dislike. In case you guys are new to my channel, this information will be very helpful. I will also list this in the description box down below, along with a list of popular foundations that I wear and what shade I wear in those foundations. So this foundation comes in 40 different shades, which I thought was really incredible that they launched this foundation in 40 shades. Even though there were 40 shades in this foundation, I had some issues getting my shade. I will get into that in just a minute. The information on this foundation, it is a natural finish liquid foundation available in 40 shades, developed for all skin types that can be worn in multiple ways for a flawless looking complexion. It is claiming to have medium coverage. It has a soft focus powder technology that is supposed to blur the looks of imperfections, large pores, and wrinkles. It is designed with a texture that blurs imperfections and makes pores appear less visible. The buildable formula offers controlled coverage. This lightweight, silky foundation is non-greasy, easy to apply, and creates a visibly unified complexion for wear that is comfortable on the skin all day long. This foundation retails for $68. Now, it is currently only available on the Gucci website. That's where I ordered it. I paid for overnight shipping, and I've been testing it ever since. When I ordered this the first time, I ordered it in the shade 330 Warm and 340 Neutral. Those are the first two shades that I got. But the undertones are very strong in both the neutral and the warm. So I went ahead and picked up the shade 250 O, which is olive. And I thought, if this is too light, I can mix it with the dark and hopefully find my right shade. So I do have 3 of these shades. Now, when I do the application, I did not have this new shade. I only had the darker shades. During the time that I have been wearing it, the last, I would say 3 days now, I have been wearing the 330 Warm mixed with the 250 Olive. So just FYI. Now, up here on this screen is an image of these foundation shades next to some of the other foundations that I have in my collection from Tom Ford, La Mer, Nars. I think there's one from McGrath. I have one from Fenty Beauty, which is the Luminous Silk, so that you can know what these shades look like next to those shades that I have listed on the screen. The shades were really ridiculous to pick out on the Gucci website. Now, when I ordered this on the Gucci website, it had not been uploaded on the Sephora website yet. So up here on the screen is the image of the shade chart that is available on the Sephora website. So when I ordered this from Gucci, it did not show the arm swatches with the actual shade names. So it was very difficult to pick my shade. I was going back and forth for probably 30 or 40 minutes on the Gucci website trying to figure it out. They do kind of have what they call a shade finder, but you have to click on the arm swatch and then it shows you what that shade is. But when you click on that shade, it looks really dark in the bottle, but then when you look at it on the model, it looks lighter. I never felt like the way that it looked in the bottle corresponded with the way that it looked on the model. It just looked very weird. It was very difficult. Plus, it was like you didn't know which range it was in. I was hoping that the 330 Warm and the 340 Neutral were in that medium range, but I would say they're more medium to tan. I feel like the undertones are stronger in this foundation. So I would keep that in mind when you're looking to buy your shade. This foundation will be available on January 1st on the Sephora website, but currently it's only available on the Gucci website. Now, the other product that they launched was the new primer. This is the Silk Priming Serum. It retails for $57. It is a primer that creates a luminous matte finish, visibly evens tones, and visibly plumps skin while creating a soft glow effect. So I have been wearing this. I have been wearing it half and half. So on one side of my face, I wear the Gucci primer, and on the other side, I've been wearing different primers in my collection, such as the Magic Cream from Charlotte Tilbury, the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base. I've also wore the Tatcha Silk Canvas in the liquid, and I've also wore the Sicily, this primer, the very, very expensive primer. I probably won't give you my full thoughts on this primer only because I haven't worn it with other foundations. I like my primers to work with all of my favorite foundations. So because I've been testing this foundation for the last 6 days, I have not had a chance to wear it with other foundations. So I will keep you updated on it. But what I will say about the primer is that the side that I've been wearing this primer on, it does look a little bit smoother over like the orange pill, you know, that you have kind of right across your cheek. I do feel like this does help with pores. I have felt like the entire time I've worn it that the side that I wear the primer on, it does look a little bit smoother. So that's what I'm going to say about it, but I'm not going to put my stamp of approval on it yet because I really need to wear it with other foundations before I can, you know, say that this primer is worth it because it's very expensive. Let's go ahead and jump into the application so you can see me apply it. I apply it with a brush and then on one side with a sponge, and then I will do a midday check-in so you guys can see what this foundation looks like in the natural daylight. Then I will give you footage of me wearing it for 12 hours so you can kind of see what it looks like 12 hours later. And during that time, I will give you my full final thoughts on this foundation. So let's go ahead and jump straight into the application. Okay, so I just got my Gucci package and I'm excited to test this out. Not only did I get this really cute bag, love these, for all 3 of them, by the way, but it also came with this. So I got 3 of these, which have these handles. So Gucci, well done on presentation, because it's pretty awesome. Upon swatching 330 Warm, this does look pretty warm. So it is a very, very warm shade. Okay, so this is 340 Neutral. So this is 330 Warm and this is 340 Neutral. I think I'm going to do the 340 Neutral. I think this is just way dark. So I'm going to use this on half of the face. And lately I've just been using the Magic Cream as my primer. It's really worked well for me. So I'm going to put the Magic Cream on one side and then I'll put the Gucci on the other. And that's probably how I will test the primer. I'm going to put a little bit of the Magic Cream. Magic Cream has been working really well. I also like the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base. Both of those are really good for me, especially right now while I'm dry. But I just like the way that my skin feels and my foundation blends over top of it really, really well. Let's go ahead and put on the Gucci. So it is a serum type product. I'm not smelling any fragrance in the primer, so it might smell a little bit like a hint, like a faint floral scent. Very faint though. Now that's coming from somebody that doesn't have like the strongest sense of smell. I wouldn't call this heavily fragrant at all. Okay, so on one side of the face, I'm going to use the Rephr number 24 brush. It's a really good foundation brush. And then on the other side, I'll use a sponge. My preferred way to apply foundation is brush all over, doing a thin, even layer, and then going over with a sponge. But on this side, I will do the sponge only. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the shade 340 Neutral, and I've got 2 pumps here. Let's just see what kind of coverage we can get. It's got really good coverage. I did not grab very much of this, and I'm getting really good coverage from this. This is a little bit too dark. I think if I end up liking the foundation, I'll save these shades for the summer. And I will probably get a lighter shade for the winter because this is a little bit too dark. But, you know, it does match my body. I mean, you can see because I normally don't fake tan my face. So of course, when you use fake tan, and if you don't put any fake tan on your face, your face is going to be lighter than the rest of your body. That's kind of what it's going to do, is that it's got a lot of pigment, but it's very lightweight. Like, I don't really feel like I have foundation on. So I would say this is like one even layer. Now, I applied it with a clean brush, and because I did that, I don't really feel like I need to go over it with a sponge. It's just kind of really melted into the skin quite nicely. So I'm going to pick up some here with my sponge and do this side with it. But you can see a little bit of this foundation goes a really long way, like a long way. Now, of course, if you're using a sponge, you're going to use more than you would if you were using just a brush only, but yeah, this shade is definitely a little bit too dark, but I can make it work. Okay, so far that is one even layer with a sponge and one even layer with a brush. I do feel like I got better coverage with a brush, which is kind of typical for me. But this is a pretty thick foundation, and it a little bit goes a really long way. So I recommend using just a little bit to start out and then kind of build from there. And I'm going to build up a little bit of coverage because I felt like the sponge kind of, you know, I mean, this shade is definitely not the right shade for me. I definitely need a lighter shade. Okay, so I went ahead and added some concealer, done my brows, and once I put concealer on, this kind of warmed up to my skin a little bit. It's still not my favorite color. I needed a shade that I could work with, and I can work with this. Once I put concealer on, it just kind of all came together. And I think once I put some blush on and stuff and kind of finish the rest of my makeup, it won't be as like stark difference. But this is definitely not my preferred shade, but I can make it work for the review. So I'm going to come in real close here so you guys can see. This is a very, very lightweight foundation. It is a fluid type foundation that you really can't feel on your skin. And I'm very curious about it because so far I really like the way that this feels. And I also really like the way that that primer works right here on my pores. I think this side just looks better than this side. I don't know if you can notice, but like as the light hits this, you can see that this side's just a little bit smoother, and I'm very curious about it. So I don't know, something to kind of keep my eyes on, but so far I don't really feel like this needs to be powdered. So it's a very natural finish. I feel like it's set down. It's probably been on for about 10 minutes now, so I feel like it's set down on my skin. So that's it for the application portion of the video. I will see you guys in my next check-in. Okay, everyone, I am back for a 6-hour check-in, and it is currently 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I am freezing. I got my coat on. I'm out front on my porch, so if my hand's a little wobbly, I apologize. But I wanted to pop out here and show you guys what this looks like in the natural daylight. It has already snowed here. We have quite a bit of snow, and it's cold. So we're gonna get through this. So if the camera is wobbly, I apologize. Now the shade is definitely off. You can tell that it's just way too dark for my skin. That's the bottom line. Even when I'm self-tanned, it's just a little bit too dark. But I'm gonna grab my mirror here, and I applied this right around 10 o'clock this morning. So I've had this on for 6 hours. This is my 6-hour mark. I knew I would need to, it gets dark here at 5, so I knew I'd need to get it on early so that I could wear it as long as I could. But it looks pretty good. The thing that I've noticed is that it does look really good over the pores, but I don't know that I love it in my wrinkles. I look really orange out here in the natural daylight. But let's go ahead and zoom you guys in. So you can kind of see like right around their wrinkle area, it's a little heavy. You know, I do have some texture along here, so it's a little heavier in the textured area. here it is, you know, above my brows, along my forehead. Now, yes, the shade is off, so you can see how the foundation kind of separates from the skin. And you're gonna see that more, especially when the shade is not 100%. So keep that in mind. But, you know, normally when you have a foundation that's a better shade match for you, it'll wear a lot better than it will if the shade's off. Because if the shade does not match your skin at all, you'll be able to see it as it starts to wear off throughout the day. Now, right now I have no powder on. I did want to keep this powder free for this check-in so you guys could see what it looks like just with the foundation only, with nothing over top of it. I didn't spray any setting spray. I just put my makeup directly over top of it, and that's as far as I've gone. Now, I will say, I think this looks pretty good for no powder. Typically, I like to apply a little bit of the Hourglass setting powder over top, kind of, you know, smooth out the foundation, and then I like to use my Charlotte Tilbury powder right here in this area to kind of smooth this area out. This foundation does look really pretty over the pores. I have noticed that I think it looks better over the pores than some of the other foundations that I have. But I think it's weighing a little bit heavy in my wrinkles area. So like right here, let me zoom you in. Let me get the right lighting here. Right here in this area, I feel like it's just a little bit heavy, but not bad. I mean, it's only been on 6 hours. It started to kind of pull away from my nose a little bit, but so far it's not bad. I don't really love the way it looks over like my hyperpigmentation. It seems to me it's a foundation that I can't really put a lot of on. That's the one thing that I've noticed, is that any of the areas that I build up the coverage, I don't love it in those areas. It seems like if you get this foundation too thick, it will start to kind of pull away from the skin and get heavy in those areas. But it does look really good over like the orange peel and over my pores. I think that's the one thing that I've noticed that I've really, really liked and enjoyed about it. That's it for this check-in. I will see you guys in my next check-in. Now that we've gotten through all of that, let's go ahead and jump into my final thoughts about this foundation. Up here on the screen is an image of what this foundation looks like 12 hours later. You can see how it wears in the smile lines. You can see how it wears in between the brows. And I have a lot to say about this foundation. Number one thing that I will say about this foundation is the way that you apply it. So I think the reason why I was having so many issues with this foundation is the simple fact that the application has to be right. And it's not necessarily the primer, to be honest with you. I've tried it with multiple primers, like I stated in the intro. The thing that I've noticed the most with this foundation is the foundation has to be applied immediately after I apply the primer. Like, I cannot give it time to set into my skin or anything. If I don't put the foundation on immediately after the primer, the foundation sits on top of the skin and it's harder to blend into the skin and make it look more natural. One of the major requirements for me to give my stamp of approval on a foundation is that it cannot sit on top of my skin. I want it to set down on the skin and look very natural and healthy, but I don't want to see it sitting on top. So I don't want that mask cake-like look, right? Well, I've noticed that if I give my primers time to kind of dry before going in with the foundation will never look skin-like. It won't blend in. It's almost like it needs the primer to blend the foundation into the skin. So that's number one. Number two is my brushes. So I have tried this with a sponge only, and for me, it does not work. I need a brush that is clean. One of the days that I used a brush that was dirty, it was a hot mess. I had to go and wash my face, redo my skincare for the morning, and then start over. With a dirty brush, it just would not set onto my skin. It wouldn't absorb into my skin. It was the most craziest thing I've ever seen. But for me, in my experience with this foundation, it has to be a clean brush or a brush that's only been used once or twice. If I have a dirty brush that's been used 3 or 4 times, it's not gonna work. You can see all the brush strokes, and even if I go in with the sponge, it just won't push into the skin very well. Number 3, I have to apply a thin layer. This for me is not a foundation that I can build very much. It's a very interesting foundation because if I go to build it in certain areas, it will literally just start lifting in those areas throughout the day. So it's one of those that I need a even layer all over the face, which is one reason why I can't use a sponge. If I was just using a sponge and I went in with the foundation, any place that I put that much product into, as I start blending it, this spot that I started will always have more foundation than the other spots, right? So as the day progresses, those spots that have more foundation on them than the others, it will start kind of looking cakey and heavy, and then it will just start like pulling and lifting away from the skin. It had to be a thin, even layer all over the face of this, and that means a tiny bit of it. So that's number 4. You can't use a lot of this foundation. Every single time I went in with too much foundation, it was a hot mess by the end of the day. Hot mess. So number 5, I have to set this foundation. This is a foundation that I cannot not wear powder. I've worn it 2 times without setting it, and both times this was my result. It literally allows all of my, and I don't even have combo or oily skin. I would say right now, I'm on the border of being dry. Right now I'm normal, but I'm almost dry. Like I've had to start wearing my Tatcha dewy skin cream at night because, you know, during the winter I'm more dry because we have the heater on, you know, in the home, and it just dries my skin out. So I have to have something that's more moisturized. And this foundation just like, I mean, it just starts peeling away from my skin. It starts lifting and peeling. So I have to set this foundation. So all of the things that I just mentioned was the reason why I couldn't figure out what I felt about this foundation. One day I'd wear it and I would absolutely love it. And the next day I would hate it. The entire day I would hate it. And I kept going back and forth. It was just this back and forth, back and forth. I loved it and I hated it. And the next day I was like, oh, but this is pretty. What am I doing wrong? So fortunately, when I'm testing foundations, I take notes and I write down, okay, day 1, I have put this primer on with this powder or no powder or whatever. So I was starting to kind of narrow it down to what this foundation needed when I applied it. And all the things, all the 5 steps that I mentioned were the game changers when it came to getting a good result from this foundation. With that said, do I feel like this foundation is worth the money? No, I think there's a lot of great foundations out on the market that just don't take this much work to make it work. Number 1, the shades are wonky with the undertones. The undertones are so strong. I think it's going to take a lot of trial and error to get your right shade in this foundation, which is a hassle all in itself. But number 2, I just don't want to have to think that much. Like, I don't want to have to worry about, okay, when I wear this foundation, I'm going to have to take all of these steps to ensure that it looks pretty throughout the day. I have a lot of great foundations in my collection. In fact, I just uploaded a video on my channel of my top 10 foundations of 2020, and every single foundation in that video works great for me with little to no effort. This just took too much effort to make it work. Now, when I make it work, do I think it's beautiful? Yes. Those days that I immediately applied it over a primer without allowing the primer to dry, I used a clean brush. I used a little bit of product and evenly applied all over the face, and then pressed it in with a damp sponge and powdered it. So if I followed all of those steps, it's beautiful. And when I follow all those steps, it does last for 12 hours. I went to the mall yesterday and I had my mask on and off. I don't even know how many times. Can't tell you how many times. And I was running a bunch of errands, doing some last minute stuff, and of course trying to stay safe, and I had to go to the DMV, which was a nightmare. You know how that is. When I went to wipe my makeup off, the foundation looked beautiful still. And it was because I had done all of those steps to ensure that it would last and look beautiful throughout the day. I do love the way that it looks on camera. I think it's really beautiful on camera if I get the right undertone. But I felt like, okay, so if I follow those steps, it's a beautiful foundation. But do I feel like this foundation is going to work for everybody? I do not believe that. I do not believe this is going to work for all skin types. I think if you're dry skin, I would not mess with this foundation. I think if you are oily, I would not mess with this. I think those of you that have a normal or combination skin, you can probably make this work. You're just going to make sure, I would just make sure that you powder it good. But I just feel like there's just too much hassle in this foundation to make it work. And I personally cannot recommend it. I feel like it might be a little bit overhyped for what it is. I don't feel like it's revolutionary in any way. In fact, I think the Tom Ford Traceless Liquid Foundation has about the same finish. So this Gucci is about the same finish as the Traceless. It's really natural. And this one is, the Tom Ford is more of like a soft matte. And this can be a soft matte. Once you set it, it becomes a soft matte. If you don't set it, for me, it just lifts off my face. Even with, and let me say this, the one day that I tested it with the Sicily primer, I did not set it because this is a primer that kind of gives you a gripping effect and it really locks your foundation all day long. So I thought, well, I'm going to test it with this and not set it and see if it will start lifting from my skin without powder. It's still lifted from my skin, even with this primer. And this primer has been pretty incredible to keep foundations locked and loaded without powder. There's just too many steps in order for me to recommend it. I think it's too expensive for the hassle. I personally do. I'm just not living for this Gucci formula. Wearing it for 6 days, I've worn it on some of the days I have absolutely loved it, and some of the days I've absolutely hated it. But when I break it all down and I really go through and say, what is it that I really love about this foundation? Okay, well, it does look really beautiful when I take all those steps, but is that anything different than what I already have? And the answer is no. It's not a revolutionary formula. It's nothing different than what we already have out there. And I just don't feel like it's worth it. I don't feel like the hassle is worth trying to make it work. I mean, I am 3 bottles into this and trying to find the right shade. I still don't have the right shade. But like I said, I only bought the 350O because I thought, well, if it is too light, I can mix with these and make it work, which I was able to make it work. But the point is, I have really worked with this foundation. I have put everything towards it. Different primers, setting it, different powders, no powder, and I just don't feel like it's worth the hype. I really don't. If you have this foundation, let us know in the comments down below what your experience is. Did you have the same experience I did? You really couldn't figure out what you liked or what you didn't like about it? Did you love it one day and dislike it the next? Or do you love it? Or do you just completely dislike it and you want to return it? Your guys' input and feedback is just as important as anybody else coming on camera and talking about their experiences. So sound off down below. I know a lot of you guys bought this foundation. Share your thoughts on it. Share your skin type and let us know. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I hope that you guys all have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas with your family. And I will see you all in my next video. Love you. Bye.